What's up, savvy expats? Tipping etiquette in every country is different. In America, it's expected. If you don't tip, tables will be flipped. Didn't mean to rhyme there. While in other countries, tipping isn't required and it's a simple act of gratitude. But how about in the Philippines? Is tipping required? What percentage should you tip? And how much is enough? In this video, we dive deep into the specifics of tipping etiquette in the Philippines so that you're not left with the bill wondering what's customary to tip here in this country. Alright, enough talk, let's get straight into it. So first off, let me just say, tipping in America is very different than tipping in the Philippines. How so? Well, as you know, it's customary to tip between 15 to 20% in America. Otherwise, you may find a loogie in your drink next time they see you. And in some cases, anything less than 20% is considered a bad tip in the US. So, it's none of our surprise that, at least culturally speaking, you are obligated to tip in America. On the other hand, however, tipping in the Philippines is not required, let alone even expected. If you don't tip, staff won't get offended because many people here don't tip in the first place. Now, that's what some people do, fine, but how about for those of us that do tip? Well, the customary tipping range will depend on where you are. If you're in the province or a small city, most people will tip between 20 to 50 pesos. That's around 40 cents to $1 for a tip. Meanwhile, if you're in an upper class city like Bonifacio Global City or Makati, the average tip is between 100 to 200 pesos. That's around $2 to $4 for a tip. Now, I know what you may be thinking. Wow, only $2 for a tip? That's so little. Well, now you can see why tipping etiquette here in the Philippines is a culture shock for many of us from the US. But truth be told, giving a $2 tip in the Philippines is great. If you give anything more than $2, say $5 or even $10 for a tip, oh man, I am telling you, you would absolutely make someone's day. Giving 500 pesos for a tip here in the Philippines only comes once in a blue moon, so you would light the biggest smile on somebody's face. And the crazy thing is, to us, that's not a lot of money, but it goes a very long way for the locals here. That's groceries, food on the table, and even a whole day wages for many of the locals here. And so overall, a good rule of thumb to follow here for tipping in the Philippines is between 50 to 100 pesos for most places. Again, tipping isn't required, but it's still good practice to show some love to the locals here. And one reason tipping isn't required in some of the restaurants here is because service charge is already included. So you'll find that on your receipt, the SC charge or service charge is already included on top of your bill. In this case, then, you don't have to tip at all, but only a small minority of people here will give a tip on top of that anyways. Now, of course, the amount you tip will vary from case to case. You're not going to tip the cab driver the same amount that you tip your masseuse in most cases. So let's get into the specifics of tipping for each scenario, starting with the airports here. Generally speaking, most airport staff are forbidden to receive tips due to regulations, but baggage porters are an exception. This is an optional service where you can have your luggages brought from the baggage carousel to your taxi. If you do decide to take up this service, paying your baggage porter 20 to 50 pesos will suffice. If, however, they lugged around a lot of baggages, then feel free to be more generous. Now, how about tipping taxi drivers? When it comes to tipping taxi or even tricycle drivers, most people just round up the cost. Say the meter says 233 pesos, you round up the cost to 250 pesos and you're good. If you're satisfied with your service and you'd like to show more appreciation, tipping 20 to 50 pesos is the norm, and you can tip as much as you like. Meanwhile, when it comes to tipping Grab drivers, your ride is already typically charged to your card. So if you have cash on hand, tipping 50 to 100 pesos, especially if your driver went above and beyond through hectic traffic, would be great. Now let's talk about tipping food delivery drivers, be it from Grab Food or Food Panda. Tipping food delivery drivers is not very common in the Philippines. Most locals don't tip them, and you're not obligated to either. If you do want to tip, however, the standard tip is around 20 to 50 pesos. Speaking of, I have an interesting story about my tipping experience with a Grab food delivery driver. So I was at my friend's house, it was 2 a.m. and we're all hungry. We decided to order McDonald's and none of the food delivery drivers were accepting orders, being how late it was. And the only driver that accepted the order was a guy riding on a bicycle. Yep, you heard me right, a bicycle. And so you can imagine how hard of a worker that guy must be to be biking at 2 in the morning to earn a living. So this delivery driver must have biked a mile or two just to deliver the food. I gave him a small tip of only 50 pesos or $1, and I wish you could have seen the expression on his face. He was on the verge of tears, so unbelievably grateful that someone even gave him a tip. And what's more astounding to me is that he didn't even want to accept the tip. He was trying to give me back the 50 pesos. Just imagine tipping $1 in the Philippines. People are so appreciative. And then tipping $1 in the US, people would go ballistic. Either way, no matter what country you are, service employees do work very hard, so I do believe they do deserve a tip. But after just seeing that experience, I was just so blown away by how unbelievably appreciative and grateful the locals are here. Now let's talk about tipping in restaurants. So when it comes to tipping in the upscale restaurants in the bigger cities, the service charge is already usually included. It's up to you whether or not you want to add any additional tip on top of this. If there isn't a service charge, the standard tip here is usually 10% on top of the bill. Of course, if you're very satisfied with your service or you have a go-to waiter, I suggest you tip more than this. Many people here tip 100 to 200 pesos or $2 to $4 depending on the restaurant. Now let's talk about tipping at spas. So let's say you get a 1-hour massage for 500 pesos or around $10. This fee mostly goes to the establishment and your masseuse likely gets less than half of that. On average, here in the Philippines, it's common to tip around 50 to 100 pesos to your masseuse or around 10% of the bill. If on the other hand, you order a room service massage, it's common to tip 200 pesos or more. Now, if you're at the salon and you or your loved one gets your hair or nails done, then tipping around 100 pesos is nothing out of the ordinary as well. Now, if you're coming to the Philippines on vacation and you've hired a tour guide, then how much should you tip him? Of course, the amount you tip will depend on how long the tour was and how many people were with you. But normally, tipping 100 pesos or $2 per person that was with you on the tour is a decent tip. Be sure, however, that you do pay the tour guide in cash while in person and that you don't overpay on card to the travel agency. Otherwise, it's likely that none of the money is going to your tour guide. Now, let's talk tipping at hotels. If you're staying in a 3 to 5-star hotel, normally you do not tip front desk personnel, but you do tip bellboys, housekeeping, waiters, and concierge. 50 to 100 pesos is a decent rule of thumb for tipping at hotels here. The same goes for staying at Airbnbs, budget hotels, and transient inns. Next, during your stay here in the Philippines, you'll encounter kind people willing to lend a helping hand. Be it a security guard or a parking attendant that hailed a cab for you, a 20 peso tip should be enough. So, all in all guys, tipping is not an obligation here in the Philippines. And when you do tip, while it may not be a lot for you, it not only means a lot for the locals here, but also goes a very long way. The amount of smiling faces and appreciative handshakes that we've gotten here over the past 3 years is priceless. So I highly recommend, while it isn't required to tip, try to show some love to the hardworking people here and there. And so there you have it, Savvy Expats. That is a full guide on everything you need to know on the tipping etiquette here in the Philippines. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, feel free to tip the channel with a like and subscribe. And so thank you for watching, Savvy Expats, and I'll see you in the next video. God bless.